A quick message for those listening in English. When the Swiss guests are speaking in German, there will be a lag for the translation into English, so have no fear. So, hello everyone. Welcome back. So, we're going to do something ambitious and innovative here. We're going to be talking about young audiences and innovation and what happens with schools having artistic residencies. Or schools going to museums, museums coming to the school. So we are delighted to welcome from Zurich Manuela HITZ, Artistic Director and Head of Education of the MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE, and Christina Studer next to me, who is a teacher at WAIDHALDE School works in partnership with the MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE. Then we have Jeanne BARRAL, a conservator of the CARTIER Foundation for Contemporary Art. And normally we should have had Anne Oster from the Pompidou Center in Metz in charge of the education services, but because of the transport strikes, she decided not to come today because it would have been very difficult for her to get home. But so what I'll do is present a bit about her project for her. Well, so just a few words of introduction. I think what we're seeing is a lot of new research and initiatives for innovative education services, working with schools and museums, and different forms of learning approaches as well, teaching and learning approaches going on within schools and within museums. So we are interested in seeing how these projects transform the relationship between pupils and art by involving them in the life of the cultural institution and calling on them to develop certain skills, including their language and psychosocial skills. So we'll be hearing about some of those projects, and we'll be talking about what this can mean for their emotional and cognitive development. And we'll hear about these cross-disciplinary work as well. Now, in France, the Giacometti Foundation in Paris recently launched a new school museum. And then in Avignon, the Lambert Foundation also created a program for primary school children in difficulty to benefit from specific services. And the Pompidou Center in Metz created a tailor-made project that I'll present to you later. And the Cartier Foundation is currently presenting an exhibit by Fabrice Heiber, something of a school and an art center. And we have a beautiful document here. It's a beautiful exhibit, and I really encourage you to go have a look at that. So, just quickly, there are many other initiatives of this type around Europe. So the Musée Visionnaire is doing a really long-term project. It's been 5 years now, working with primary school children. So we said that there's also in Barcelona at the MOBA Museum of the City History Museum, working with primary school children. But in the United States, we see some other examples. So as I said, school museums or museums in the school, working with children of all ages up through high school age, in fact. So either a museum artist taking up residency in the school. So, for example, at the New York City Museum School, you might be familiar with, but that is for high school students. also in the United States, such initiatives tend to have a lot of cooperation together. In Europe, there's the National Association of Museum Schools, which you might be familiar with. And if you have the chance to go to Atlanta for the major congress there, well, we would like to see such a thing come to Europe. And in any case, that organization in the U.S. has shown that the school results, school performance in regular subjects, including mathematics and geography, all sorts of subjects, the pupils do much better than young people in similar situations who did not benefit from these initiatives. So let's start with Jeanne BARRAL. Your project has just been inaugurated. In fact, in December, it is a school imagined by the artist Fabrice Heiber, which he develops as a true artistic work. So why did Fabrice want to do such a project? What were some of his sources of inspiration? Hello, everyone. I'm Jeanne BARRAL. I'm head of collections, working with Lavallée at the CARTIER Foundation. This is in Paris, and it opened 8th of December, and it runs through the 30th of April. And so the show is called Lavallée, but in fact, it's something of a school. The CARTIER Foundation has always proposed educational programs, but here this is rather specific because what the artist wanted to do here in his show, in his exhibit, would be to have the children not only learn, but also learn to do, learn in a collective way through the exhibit. So for him, he feels that all exhibits should be a learning experience, and one should be able to continually learn from works of art. And so this was the spirit of our exhibit. And it's called Lavallée, which is the name of the place where he lives, southwest of Nantes. He was born in 1961 in the town of Luçon, in the southern part of the Vendée region. And what he did was he began to restore the farm, the sheep farm. His parents were shepherds, and he began to restore different spaces. And he also began to spread out into the surrounding forest. For him, he began buying up land around the farm with an artistic project. In fact, one of his very first works is a landscape work, in fact, which, starting from rather farm land, he wanted to move away what he saw as a rather industrial form of art, and this and it was also, he was not happy to see the development of agribusiness in his region, which is why he wanted to plant a forest, protect the forest, because it needed to be done quickly. He had help from his father. But he learned a lot from this experience, made mistakes, and learned from them. And so he learned so much from that experience that he decided to create it as a sort of a learning lab and a way of passing on what he had learned. So this is something that he wanted to develop at the Cartier Foundation, with the idea to not only position himself as the person in the know and passing on information, but also for himself to learn from the children. And so for us at the Cartier Foundation, we are delighted to learn at the same time. So it takes many different shapes, in fact. But just to give you a quick introduction, we started in September, before the opening, to start having 15 different school groups. So it's a bit like what is being done at Pompidou Center in Metz. We took inspiration from what she had done with these classes in residency, we called them. And so here we had school children from the Paris area and from the Vendée region. So primary schools and vocational schools focused on agriculture. We've got agricultural and horticultural students. There's one is rather innovative, the other more traditional school. And as for the primary schools, they are in first, second, and third grade. So at about 7, 8, 9 years old. And they come in during the closing days of the foundation. Those days are devoted to our school groups, who will spend an entire day there with a specific program for them that is, nothing to do with a guided tour. In fact, it's a way for them to continue to work on their school program, but touching on very many other topics, including physics, biology, poetry and literature, geography. So what we did was, as we were beginning to develop the project, well, I hired someone specifically to try to understand ways that Fabrice's work could be transposed to the school program at both the primary level and at the vocational high school level, so that it would be a very open approach where they continue to learn part of their program, but taking a very different approach. So that was one of the first ideas that we wanted to pursue. We also hired cultural mediators who come in on the Mondays when the school groups are there, but they're also there the rest of the week, and they help develop the teaching program. So quantum physics, and then we might get a class on the Tour de France bicycle race, or we'll get a class on weather and rain and climate, genetic variance. I mean, just 10-minute lessons in front of a painting, in fact. So it's not an analysis of the painting. It's the painting is a starting point for a quick lesson on very wide topics. And so we work with specialists, of course. We've had doctors, geographers, and journalists who have helped us put together these short courses that are open to all visitors. In fact, all of the rest of the week when we're open. So I certainly hope you'll have time to come. We've got a blackboard that shows what the lessons will be during the day. And another type of class that we do are conferences. We call them the Voices of the Valley. So it's Thursday evenings. We welcome two specialists of interest to the artist. And in fact, there's no moderator. These are two, it's a pair of specialists in different domains who are going to take one of Fabrice's works as a starting point and have just a discussion together. And what they do is discuss some of Fabrice's themes and in connection with their area of expertise. So we had Marie Dariussec, for example, who wrote the book Our Life in the Forest, and with the Ernst Zürcher, who is a researcher in forestry. And they had a talk in front of a painting, in fact, and then we will also have Paul Preciado, an artist, and then you'll be talking with Pauline Desroulèdes, who is a disabled tennis player. So they're going to be talking about the metamorphoses of the body. And so a lot of this is an excellent learning experience, including for the artist. Okay, so when we talk about the sources of inspiration, we understand a lot of this is coming from Fabrice Hyman's history, his personal history. Is this inspired by the Freinet pedagogy at all? Well, yes, we did look into some of the experimental educational approaches, and Fabrice himself said that he was, enjoyed his school years, but it's through his art teachers that, he was able to meet some artists, and he understood that, this could be possible. And yet he came from a farming family and a rural area. And he signed himself up for art classes at the universities. So, yes, we really wanted to explore alternative pedagogies. So what we wanted to do was to co-build this program with teachers and not just work from theoretic texts. We worked with the teachers of the 15 classes, of the 15 groups, to understand what would make the most sense for them. Okay, well, this is something that we can now talk about with our Swiss guests so Manuela HITZ of the MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE and Christina Studer, a teacher from WAIDHALDE school. And Manuela was a teacher herself, so we look forward to hearing from you. What we're going to do is talk a bit about the MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE. And so there's going to be, the language management's going to be a little bit more complicated, because when our guests speak in German, there will be simultaneous translation into French, and then there will be translation into English afterwards. Okay. So I hope the English speakers have understood how this is going to have to work. So have no fear. You will get the translation in French and English. So, Manuela, you've been working with Christina for 5 years now, and you have developed a program for 7, 8-year-olds. So you've developed a program at the school and the museum, working with the WAIDHALDE Schule in Zurich. So, tell us a bit how this project was developed, what gave you the idea, and I believe you have a short video to show us.
Wir gehen halt einmal in der Woche ins MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE.
Es ist halt schön, dass wir nicht nur im Klassenzimmer Schule haben.
Durch die Art von Unterricht lernen Kinder, eigene Gedankengänge zu entwickeln und auf eigene Lösungen zu kommen.
MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE stellt Outsider-Künstler aus, die so bessere oder andere Vorstellungen haben.
Die Kinder reagieren sehr gut auf die Künstler. Es ist nicht immer einfach, so die Künstler so 1:1 zu sehen, weil gewisse sind sehr speziell. Und das gibt ihnen aber auch eine extreme Offenheit und einen neuen Zugang auch zu verschiedenen Menschen.
Immer am Anfang des Museums kriegt man zu einem neuen Künstler einen Input.
Der Parzival ist auch ein Künstler, der da ausstellt. Er beschäftigt sich halt mega fest mit der Umwelt.
Er macht immer wieder mit uns so Workshops. Zum Beispiel heute so haben wir so einen Esperanto-Kurs.
Der Parzival ist ein Superheld für mich, weil er den Weltfrieden machen will und er nur das Gute für die Welt will.
Dass wir hier ganzen Morgen dürfen sein, ermöglicht den Kindern ein ganzheitliches Lernen.
Wir berechnen in Bezug zu den Künstlern und deren Kunst Sachen berechnen, wie zum Beispiel, das sind
Ok, alors donc Manuela, est-ce que vous pouvez nous expliquer un petit peu comment est né
All right, Manuela, can you tell us more about how this project was born?
Diese kurze Vorstellung von den Kindern. Ich wollte zuerst die Kinder sprechen lassen, ein wenig einen Eindruck geben, um was es sich handelt oder was ihnen wichtig ist. Und jetzt erzähle ich noch ein wenig, wie es dazu kam. Das war vor 5 Jahren, da habe ich einen Workshop gegeben, einen kurzen Input zu einer Ausstellung mit Christina Studers Klasse und ihr.
So, thank you very much for inviting us. It was nice to see a bit of the video and hear the kids express themselves in their own words. So you asked how we started this project. Well, it began 5 years ago, and I began working with Christina through a workshop that we put together.
Christina Studer hat mich dann gefragt, ob sie nach einem Monat wieder kommen könnte, da es so viele Ideen und Umsetzungsmöglichkeiten gab, die sie gerne im Unterricht aufnehmen wollte. Und ich war begeistert über diese Möglichkeit, etwas längerfristig anzudenken.
So Christina was so delighted with the way things ran that she asked if she could come back a month later because there were so many ideas, so many things that could be done. And I really liked that idea, and so we agreed to that.
Ich muss da kurz erwähnen, dass das MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE ein kleines Museum ist, das sich spezialisiert hat auf Outsider-Art oder Art Brut. Und wir nehmen den Begriff noch ein wenig weiter. Wir stellen aus Künstlerinnen und Künstler, die sich nicht im konventionellen Kunstkontext aufhalten, die irgendwo aus dem Rahmen fallen.
And so I should explain perhaps that the MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE is a small museum primarily focused on outsider art. So we are showing the works by artists that you would not find in standard museums.
Da gab es nicht nur Kunstwerke, die Christina Studer mit den Schülerinnen thematisieren wollte, sondern auch die Biografien hinter den Künstlerinnen, dieses aus der Rolle zu fallen, aus dem System zu fallen, das aufzunehmen als Klasse und das in dieser Zeit zu thematisieren, das war Christina sehr wichtig und mir natürlich auch. Darum arbeite ich im MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE.
And so Christina wanted to explore not only these artworks with her pupils, but also to learn from the stories behind the artists who made them, who were outside the regular circuit, to help them understand that many things are possible.
Wir hatten das Glück, dass das Schulsystem in der Schweiz sich veränderte, dass der Lehrplan sozusagen, der wurde angepasst und es waren viele offene, mehr Freiheit möglich, wie man die Kinder unterrichtet oder Lernorte wurden gesucht, aber auch das ganzheitliche Lernen war im Fokus.
We're quite lucky in Switzerland that the education system has been evolving, allowing us more freedom in the way we put together our programs and how we teach. And also it allows us to go outside of the class and show things that are out of the ordinary class system.
Und genau in diesem Zeitpunkt haben wir begonnen zu denken, was passiert, wenn die Schülerinnen und Schüler nicht einfach einmal ins Museum kommen, sondern wenn sie sich die Ausstellung, die Räumlichkeiten, die Thematiken sich aneignen in einem längerfristigen Projekt.
So we began to start to think about how we could do this. The idea was not just to take the children once to a museum, but rather to make this a place that would become, in a sense, their own and where they could learn to really relate to the works.
So, wir wurden zum Pilotprojekt der Stadt Zürich. Sie waren sehr willkommen, dass wir so initiativ waren, dass sie gedacht haben, da kommt etwas gerade von der Front, das nehmen wir auf und so wurden wir zum Pilotprojekt und wir hatten die Möglichkeit, das über 3 Jahre durchzuziehen mit dieser Klasse. Ja. Also,
so we were able to join in with a project that was underway, led by the city of Zurich, and we were able to continue the project across 3 years, going with our classes once a week to the museum.
Genau. Das war die Ausgangslage. Jetzt sind wir im 5. Jahr. Also man sieht, wir dürfen das weitermachen. Es gab Veränderungen und trotzdem diese Möglichkeiten, mit einer Klasse wirklich längerfristig das kleine Museum kennenzulernen, die Werke, das Out-of-System-Denken, das kreative Denken, das macht uns bis heute Spaß und wir möchten das weiterziehen. Genau.
So that's how we got started, and initially the idea was for 3 years. Well, now it's been 5 years, and we hope to continue on this very long-term work. It's the opportunity to explore not only the works, but the creative process, and to learn about the artists themselves.
And we'd like to know about the experience of the schools and pupils, about the spaces and the way that the space is organized. For example, I think we can look at some pictures to see that better.
So this was interesting to take the school children into different places. And I think we have some images to show you what it looks like.
Genau, das ist das kleine MUSÉE Visionnaire und das Spezielle daran ist, dass der Unterricht findet wirklich direkt im Ausstellungsraum statt. Also wir haben nicht einen Vermittlungsort, wo wir die Kinder wieder rausnehmen aus der Ausstellung und in einen Raum führen, sondern wir machen alles direkt in der Ausstellung. Die Schülerinnen lernen so auch einen eigenen Platz zu finden, zu suchen, wo fühlen sie sich wohl, wohin möchten sie gehen. Sie haben keine Tische und Stühle, sie organisieren sich auch räumlich und das machen wir. Da hat es zwar jetzt einmal Tische gehabt, das gibt es manchmal, aber wir organisieren uns auch dass sie lernen, anders zu denken, auch räumlich. Also, genau.
So it's very interesting when the pupils realize that they can learn differently on site and they can do what they want there. They're not stuck behind a desk. So this they find a very interesting way to learn.
What about you? What were your sources of inspiration?
Also, ja, die Inspiration, das war eigentlich der Moment, als ich Christina getroffen habe. Ich war auch mal Lehrerin, habe nachher Kunst studiert und die Frage, wie kann man ganzheitliches Lernen mit Kindern machen, war ein Thema, das mich sehr interessierte.
Well, what really inspired me was a meeting with Christina, and this whole idea emerged of taking a holistic approach to learning.
Und ich glaube, die Kombination, dass ich Kunst studiert habe und immer wieder Wege suche, Dinge neu zu denken, neu anzudenken, auch Schule neu anzudenken. Das war die Kombination mit Christina, die dann den pädagogischen Hintergrund hatte und auch noch eine Ausbildung machte an der Pädagogischen Hochschule, um Schule anders kennenzulernen. Und das waren die Inspirationsquellen, also die Theorie und das Künstlerische, das wir dann zu einem ganz Neuen machen wollten.
Donc on comprend que c'est vraiment vos profils spécifiques à vous deux.
Well, I think it all starts from the fact that, I had studied art, but I was at a stage where I wanted to rethink it, and I wanted to think of it in connection with a different way of talking about it and teaching about it. So I think it's really the connection between education, pedagogy, and art that was particularly interesting to me, and it all came together when I met Christina.
De ce projet, donc en fait au sein d'une exposition.
And we're now going to take a quick look at the MESS project. The colleague who was going to introduce that was not able to make it today. So I'm going just to show you a couple of things that she wanted to talk about. You might know that the MESS Center is a pioneer in a lot of things, in exploring art, and together with S. Marin, which is a design studio, they started working on installations within the Centre Pompidou in Metz. And they rolled out experimental classrooms with specific furniture and a specific work on space in the classroom. You're seeing the pictures there, and 3 classes of 5th and 6th grade were able to go once a week for 3 months. So this is sort of longer term. It's not very long term, but it's not a very short term thing either. It's not for the whole school year, admittedly. But still, I think that there's something in common with all those projects, and it's the fact that they don't want to just be a one-off. There's always this approach that is longer term and that gives more time to adapt to the specific context. Now, I think it would be interesting to talk about the pedagogical aspects and the pedagogical content or the educational content of each project. I would like to know, well, you already broached the subject, each of you, but I would like to know how you articulated the educational content between typical content like math and geography on the one hand, and the works of art and the context. We've been talking about mediation, but I think that each project has its own approach. In the MUSÉE VISIONNAIRE, for example, I think that you are specifically focusing on critical thinking and on social skills that go beyond merely discovering the works of art. So I would like to know now and to give you the floor so you can tell us how you articulated all of that. Who would like to start? Jeanne?
Alors, merci d'avoir repartagé ces informations sur le Centre Pompidou.
Thank you for telling us about the Centre Pompidou Metz, because I think this is a great way to introduce what I have to say about the Fondation CARTIER schools, working from a comparison with the Metz Center. So the residencies at the Cartier Foundation don't have a dedicated classroom. They do in Metz, not in Cartier. But the school furniture is included within the exhibition itself. That way, the pupils that are there in residency every year from 9 to 11 a.m., they are really included in that. Same thing in the during the Voix de la Vallée conferences on Thursday. And then you have visitors who are not part of the residency program, and for them it also means that they have chairs that are available there and that they can leaf through the catalogues in a different way. The educational material is articulated around several aspects. There's the artistic aspect, and then there are the other subjects. On the artistic side, starting in September, all of our students have met Fabrice Hébert. The local students have been able to go to his workshop a number of times, and for the Parisian pupils, Fabrice Hébert traveled to Paris during the first half of the year, and he met them in their own classroom. That was before the start of the exhibition in December. Since then, they still had this kind of visits and meetings. Fabrice Hébert comes every Monday to see the students and to talk with them. Local classes will then also travel to Paris for a couple of days as a school outing, and in March and April, the Parisian classes will be visiting Vendée, and they will see the Valais and Fabrice's workshop. So what I like there is that you have a relationship that is being created between those classes, because every time one of the classes travels to the other, they stay there overnight, so you have a kind of twinning between those two classes. And for the younger pupils, they also have diaries of their activities, and they have an exchange of emails. It's also a great way to work on writing and writing skills. This is, of course, part of what primary school students have to learn, being able to write a newspaper article, etc. So all of that is really made possible by those exchanges. So that's for the art part. And then in the more scientific subjects, there we had a lot of work to prepare pedagogical dossiers, if you will, for younger students in classes up to 11 years, especially for vocational schools as well. And we worked on that with teachers to see how their own subjects could be mirrored in the different works of art. So we really created such a dossier. It's a kind of glossary, actually. And under each entry in that glossary, you have a definition by the artist of a specific topic, such as biodiversity, for example. And then you have the 3 different groups of age, and there's a declination of that with different activities, the types of workshops that you can have in school for this group of age, and the kind of workshop that you can have at the FONDATION CARTIER. And the mediators are there on site. They're always there to really work directly with the teachers and help bridge that gap. Now I think that all teachers have become specialists in Fabrice Hébert's work, but still there can be very specialized questions, so it's nice to have that.
Merci beaucoup. Et de votre côté, Manuela.
And so, Manuela and Christina, what about you? How did you coordinate with the regular school program?
Also uns ist es sehr wichtig, dass wir in der Bildung die ästhetische Bildung integrieren können und auch spezifisch da fördern. Deshalb hat mir das auch so gefallen, in diesem Museum, in einem Kunstmuseum, Schule zu machen.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, what was important to me, I wanted the children to get to some learning in aesthetics. It was important to teach that, and so that's why I really like the idea of being able to do this in a museum.
genau, ich nahm dann eigentlich meine alltäglichen Themen, die ich im Unterricht durchnahm, also zum Beispiel in der Mathematik, die verschiedenen Perspektiven, die verschiedenen Proportionen nahm ich mit ins Museum. Und wir haben dann haben wir das ganze Museum ausgemessen. Wir haben da auch verschiedene Methoden angewendet. Wir haben mit einem Laser, konnten die Kinder das Museum ausmessen. Sie haben aber auch von Hand mit kleinen die Treppen. Und dann hatten wir auch den Architekten eingeladen, der auch das Museum gebaut hat. Und dann hatten wir mit denen zusammen dann auch die Pläne angeschaut, das verglichen, was wir selber gemessen haben. Und wir hatten dann im Anschluss auch ein Modell gebaut.
So, yes, of course, I wanted to cover important themes in learning, including math, but also perspective and proportions in drawing. And we did a lot of measurements. In fact, we measured the entire museum. We learned to use a laser tool for measurement. We were measuring everything, even the stairs. And then we invited the architect of the museum to come and talk, and he discussed his design. And so this was very interesting, because from there, then we began to build our own scale model.
Die Kinder lernten auch, was es eigentlich braucht, so ein Museum, was es alles braucht in einem so ein Museum. Also wo werden die Bilder, die Kunst gelagert? Also sie sahen auch hinter das Museum, hinter die Wände. Und das war mir sehr wichtig, dass es nicht einfach nur in der Kunst, also dass sie nicht nur das wahrnehmen, was im Museum gleich so ist, sondern auch ein bisschen hinter die Wände sehen.
So it was very interesting for the children to learn, even beyond just the artworks that they were seeing, to see all that goes into a museum and the making of a museum, all the way to learning that there had to be storage areas for the works of art. So for me, it was very interesting to give them that full vision of the museum.
Christina, justement, j'aimerais maintenant
Christina, now to better understand your perspective as a teacher, we're delighted to hear from your experience today, and I would like to know what were the reactions of other teachers to such an ambitious project, and also how your school administration reacted, how parents reacted. Were there spontaneously positive reactions, or did you have some people who resisted the idea? I would like to know how the whole ecosystem reacted to this proposal.
Ja, das ist natürlich, da kommen viele Reaktionen, positive wie natürlich auch negative oder sehr kritische. Die Schulleitung, die hatte ich immer an meiner Seite, die stand so bei mir, die unterstützte das ganze Projekt enorm. Sie sah da wirklich die positiven Aspekte darin. Und meine Lehrerkolleginnen und Lehrerkollegen, die waren neugierig, was macht die denn da jetzt? Also es war für sie etwas Neues. Und am Anfang waren sie eher rückhaltend. Also sie haben einfach mal geschaut, was macht die? Und auch mit ein bisschen eines Skeptik, was passiert? Und mit der Zeit, war wirklich auch das Glück, dass das Projekt über lange, lange Zeit geht, konnte ich irgendwie dann auch, haben sie gesehen, das passiert etwas.
So yes, most reactions, most of the response was very positive, although there were some people a bit critical or a bit skeptical. I must say that the school administrators were very supportive of me. They really saw the interest in the entire project. Some of the colleagues, other teachers were a bit curious and thinking, well, what on earth is she up to? What are they working on? But the skeptics at the same time were not so positive about what we were up to, but I think time demonstrated the overall interest, the genuine interest of such a project.
Und ja, heute ist das Projekt fortgeschritten und nach 3 Jahren haben wir das auch ein bisschen angepasst. Also ein Punkt war, es konnte natürlich einfach eine Klasse von einem großen Schulhaus von diesem Projekt profitieren. Und das fanden natürlich dann auch gewisse ein bisschen gemein. Also die einen, die dürfen da wöchentlich ins Museum gehen, haben da einen Unterricht, wo auch kostet, also Kosten entstehen. Dann wurden zusätzliche Lehrpersonen bezahlt. Und so haben wir das ein bisschen geändert. Jetzt geht immer die 4. Klasse darf jetzt dieses Projekt besuchen. Also es ist nicht nur mehr eine Klasse und so hat das jetzt wurde das integriert in dieses Schulhaus. Es ist einfach klar, in der 4. Klasse, da geht man einmal pro Woche ins Museum. So werden auch viel mehr Kinder jetzt von diesem Projekt profitieren können.
So, yes, well, after 3 years, we decided that there had to be some changes made, in particular because of the problem that only one class was benefiting from this experience. So in a way, it seemed unfair to some, seeing their classmates go off every week to the museum and they couldn't go. So what we've done now is we've expanded it to all of the classes in that age group. So this means we also reach a lot more pupils, and it seems more fair to everyone.
Dann gab es natürlich auch noch die Eltern. Waren am Anfang auch eher skeptisch. Okay, was macht die da? Einmal pro Woche. Und mit der Zeit, okay, über 3 Jahre ist das angedacht, dass wir das machen wollen. Und da gab es dann schon, also da gibt es ja auch einen Weg, den man vom Schulhaus bis zum Museum zurücklegen musste. Und das waren etwa 15 Minuten mit dem Tram, also nicht unglaublich lange. Aber da gab es dann doch die ein oder andere Stimme, die meint, ja gut, da geht ja wirklich Unterrichtszeit verloren. Und da gab es immer wieder solche Rückmeldungen, die ich natürlich dann irgendwie kreativ überbrücken musste. Okay, gut, dann schreiben wir jetzt im Tram ein Tagebuch, was wir dann alles irgendwie gemacht haben. Man wird irgendwie kreativer, wenn man dann halt natürlich auch mit Kritik konfrontiert wird. Ja.
But then we still had the question of the parents. Some of them were a bit skeptical. Why are they going so often to the museum? But I think over a 3-year period, they began to be more familiar with what we were doing. There was also the question of the travel time, because from the school to the museum, it takes 15 minutes to get there and another 15 minutes to get back. So people were a bit worried that their children were losing part of the day. So we came up with a rather creative solution, I think, was that we had the children write about their experience, write in their diary during their time in the tramway.
So there were some resistances and some difficulties.
So there were some difficulties then. So you were facing various challenges to put this together, but it's a very ambitious project in any case. Yes, also at Cartier Foundation, we had some, we were lucky in some senses. We were working with a teacher in Vincennes, Anne Rolafé. I really want to thank her for the work that she did with us. And she had worked with Fabrice Hibert, in fact, before she became a teacher. And so it meant that she already knew a lot about his work. And so this year, she can bring her pupils either to Cartier Foundation or to see him directly. And so having that person as a resource was hugely important to putting together the project and the educational content. And so there were some difficulties. This was the first time we had a partnership with a school to this extent. It was also, it meant that, yes, we had to meet with the head of her school, the school director, and the director of we had to meet with the Ministry of Education. We had to meet with the school authorities, and then also there was also the question of public transport. Because we couldn't put we couldn't have the children going in school buses. It was going to be too costly to get to bring them in. You know, it really costs far too much. So they were taking public transportation to come. So it's true that there are a few difficulties that we had to overcome. Particularly, the school principal was very concerned about this. And as concerns the school trip out to the Vendée, this was a bit complicated to organize as well. So we had to find a way to really, defend the project with the school authorities to show that, again, it's also true that only a few classes were going to benefit from it, but that's the way it always is. At any school, it's never the entire school that gets to go on these class trips. But it meant that we had to particularly defend the idea of the project. And it meant that everything had to be well organized and set up beforehand, which is not easy to do. How do you get lodgings for 100 pupils away from home? We had to ensure that there was going to be funding, and there were some special cases as well. Either, sometimes the families were asked to pay a contribution to the cost. Some families could not afford this, so we had to work out and negotiate deals. And so, of course, the Cartier Foundation also contributed to part of the cost of the school trips. But for us, it was a real learning experience for us working with the school system. We also, our work with the primary school that's just across the street from the foundation was excellent to develop this neighborhood relationship because the educational program, we wanted to open this up wider to get the siblings of the kids involved as well, to get offer discount tickets for the siblings to be able to come see the exhibit as well, the parents and other siblings. And so we were super happy that we were able to do this work with various partners, school and local authorities. So, yes, there were a lot of benefits, not only for the children involved themselves, but also with a broader reach. So what would you say was the added value for the pupils compared to some other cultural, more standard cultural education and artistic education? Because there's a difference in scale here, but these projects nonetheless concern only a small number of pupils, whereas, museums have a mission to serve the largest number. So I would like to understand, then what would what's the scale here? And do you think it can be rolled out at a larger scale?
Also das ist eine gute Frage. Entschuldigung für die Verzögerung. Ich glaube, es gibt eine Lawine. Sie beginnt klein und wird immer größer. Und ich glaube, dieses Beispiel, dass man kreatives und intrinsisches Lernen und Denken nachher für das ganze Leben brauchen kann, für das eigene Lernen. Also man wechselt vielleicht den Blickwinkel und man denkt, das ist nicht Schule und das ist nicht Lernen. Und durch dieses intrinsische Aneignen kann man nachher aber viel besser auch Französisch Vokabular lernen oder irgendwelche Sachen sich aneignen. Und ich glaube, es beginnt im Kleinen und wird immer größer und ich hoffe, es werden auch immer mehr neue Projekte starten. Aber der einzelne direkte Fokus zuerst auf etwas Kleinem war für uns wichtig, um Neues zu eröffnen.
Et comment est-ce que vous pensez qu'on pourrait changer d'échelle au fond?
So, yes, you're quite right. That's a good question. I'd say it was a bit of a snowball effect. You know, you have to start small with this, and we wanted to take a very holistic approach to creativity, and this is a lesson that is learned for life. Some people might say, well, that's not learning, that's not school, but in fact it is all interconnected, and it develops a children's vocabulary at the same time. So I think the idea is really to start small and see how you can grow from there.
For us, we try to be able to reach to more classes. There are 15 classes in the scheme, but on top of that, we have a documentary film that is being created, or that will be created to make it possible to disseminate it to even more viewers. It will be visible in the theatres, and I think that it will be a great way to expand it to more than the current 300 pupils that are part of it. When we did air, well, they are working on the project until June, and then it will take some time, I'm guessing by the end of 2024. And of course, it's not just in theatres, it can be seen in schools as well, or you will be able to see it in schools. The second thing is that we have Thursday night conferences, if you remember, and they are being recorded as well. And there's a podcast that is being made from them. And I would like to invite you to listen to them. The podcast is called Les Voix de la Vallée. It's another way of expanding our audience to only the people who are there.
Wir haben auch Filme auch gemacht. Und die können wir auch immer wieder zeigen. Und in einem Film, der heißt Ben Wilson, wir haben Ben Wilson eingeladen aus London, der bemalt plattgedrückte Kaugummis. Und da waren die Kinder mitbeteiligt. Es gab so eine Aktion, wo wir Gelder gesammelt haben. Und dann war er dann da. Wir haben es geschafft, diesen Ben Wilson nach Zürich einzuladen. Und die Kinder durften dann über eine Woche mit ihm verbringen. Und da hatten sie sehr viel über den Künstler auch gelernt, so dass sie ihr Wissen nachher auch weitergeben konnten. Und wir haben dann so mit der Stadt und dem Kanton Zürich zusammengearbeitet. Es gab eine Plattform, wo sich andere Lehrpersonen bei uns melden konnten und haben die Kinder für andere Klassen dann Führungen angeboten. Aber sie haben dann ihr Wissen weitergegeben an anderen. Das hat ein großes Publikum eigentlich dann.
So, yes, well, we made some films, and you saw an excerpt of one. Then we were also able to bring over Ben Wilson from London. He's an artist who paints on chewing gum, smashed chewing gum around the city. So we had to find the funding to bring him over, and he was able to stay for a week. Now, what was interesting here was that across the Zurich canton, we were able to make this an opportunity to open up to other classes and other schools, and it allowed the children who had participated earlier to talk about their experience.
So I have one last question to you because we're running out of time. Pardon, en français. Une dernière question de mon côté avant les éventuelles questions de la part du public. Est-ce que vous auriez des conseils à donner aux professionnels parmi nous des lieux patrimoniaux ou musées qui auraient envie de mettre en place un tel projet?
I'm sorry, my microphone was off. Excuse me, I'll start over again. Do you have any advice for any museums here in the room who would be interested in creating such a project?
Probiert seid mit Leidenschaft dabei und es ist ganz, ganz vieles möglich, auch wirklich anzufangen und weiterzukommen. Es gibt ganz vieles, die auf einmal entsteht im Prozess. Das haben wir immer wieder erlebt. Und ja, herzlich willkommen in Zürich, das auch zu sehen. Oder wir sind auch bereit, da mitzudenken, was möglich wäre. Genau. Wir würden gerne möglichst viel öffnen.
Well, I'd have to say it's always interesting for everyone to try new things, and you really have to throw yourself into it, in fact. So just get started. You can do a lot and develop little by little. And, of course, if you have the opportunity, come to Zurich and we'll talk about it. Thank you. Well, what was very positive about the project was bringing together all of the different teams, be it the collection managers. You know, I myself, for example, would not normally have been involved in the educational aspects of an exhibit. But this is something that we worked on together, both the collections, exhibit managers, and the schools. We also organized conferences, and so it was an excellent opportunity for us within the museum to work in a broader collective way. So I think it's really important that you open up to the other departments of your museums, because that can be something that is really an excellent experience for everyone at the museum. Also, we were able to hire a young woman who took care of a lot of the work with the schools, and that was very precious help to us. There was a lot of logistics involved, and that contributed to the quality of the project as well. Okay, so you need a lot of human resources. That's something that comes up a lot. Manuela, you wanted to add something.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have questions in the audience? Yes, we've got one over there.
Ça marche, oui, c'est bon, super.
Thank you very much for your interventions. That was absolutely fascinating hearing from all your initiatives, which I think are really needed because they are multidisciplinary, because they are also a great way for children to learn using their own research. I think that's absolutely a great thing. You talked about a number of things. There's one that I would like to talk about again, about the school inspection in particular. We don't have Anne Oster with us today. Unfortunately, but she would have been the right person to answer that, I think, but still. I'm really wondering, there might be researchers in pedagogics, in sociology, etc., who might be part of those initiatives. I think it's also a way to demultiply these initiatives. So that was my first question. And then I have another one about how to go to scale with those projects, because they are very high-quality projects, but how can they become a high quantity? There's a lot of work that came into it. Could those initiatives become mobile initiatives? Could they maybe go on tour? What do you imagine? For the longer term and the relationship with the school inspections, we would be happy to have them for a full day of training at the Fondation Cartier, and we will indeed have some from the management areas, management levels, who will be coming to discuss those issues. It's also an opportunity for us to meet them and better understand what they do. As for having those exhibitions on tour, it's possible, but we don't want to end up having something that is without a school, and that instead you just have an exhibition, a roaming exhibition, but you don't have the classroom residency anymore, because that's really at the heart of what we're doing with the Voix de la Vallée. So you would have to recreate it entirely. It's not just an exhibition, it requires a lot of work on the ground.
Une dernière question peut-être.
We can take one last question.
Non. Eh bien, écoutez, je vais vous remercier.
No one? Okay. Then thank you very much to all of you. Manuela, Christina, thank you very much for being here, and I hope you make it back to Zurich in spite of the strike, and we'll be thinking of you. Thank you, Jeanne, as well.